And so we're going to talk more about the three families that you follow. But I guess let's start off with Hind's story, especially because that's a story that people have hopefully heard about. But I think it's also a story that confuses a lot of people. So can you tell us what happened, what you learned happened through making this documentary that perhaps you didn't know about before, and also the latest updates on Hind's story?
Essentially, Hind's family went to the south, like a lot of families in Gaza who were told go to the south because that's where it's safe. But of course, these families in Gaza quickly discovered when they go to the south that it's not safe there. There's still attacks there. So her mother told her, Wissam, that's the name of Hind's mom. Wissam's mom told her, Wissam, write your name on your arm in case you get killed in a bombing so that people can identify you. And then Hind's mom was like, I don't want to die in an unfamiliar place. So she decided to head back north, saying that, well, at least if I die, people will know who I am here because it's my home. So she goes back north and with her two kids, Hind, who's 6 years old, and Iyad, who's 4 years old. On the night before Hind was killed, it was January 28th, there was massive bombing in the north where the family was staying. There were these fire belt bombings. It was horrifying. The next day, the family decided to leave again in search of safety. Of course, safety is impossible in Gaza. Nowhere is safe. Her uncle, Bashar, gets into a car with his family, including his 15-year-old daughter, Layan. Hind and Hind's brother, Iyad, hop in. Hind's younger brother leaves at the final minute. It was raining. It was cold. The idea was to protect the kids from the rain. It was January. It was very cold. After the family heads out, Hind's mom is on foot. They hear all this noise. The car had come under fire, and Hind's mom hears people saying, ambulance, ambulance. The car kind of turns, and they end up near a gas station, and then they talk to 15-year-old Layan, who's in the car, and she's basically saying that everyone is dead in the car except for her and Hind. And then Layan eventually dies, and then they're only talking to Hind for a period of 3 hours in which this poor little girl is begging to be rescued and saved. She's saying that the tanks are very close to her, and they coordinate with the Red Crescent office, which is in Ramallah, to send an ambulance. They coordinate that with the Israelis. The Israelis give the go-ahead. They even provide a map with a route saying this is safe, you can go. And unfortunately, the medics never made it because they also came under fire after receiving that clearance from the Israeli military. And maybe, Kavitha, you can talk about the findings of the investigation.
Earshot began with the short recording between Layan and Omar, who's one of the dispatchers at the Palestine Red Crescent in Ramallah. And there's a 6-second portion where, unfortunately, you hear the shooting, you hear her screaming, and then the line goes dead. So Earshot took that recording and specifically focused on the 6 seconds in which you can hear, I believe it's 64 shots. And they were able to analyze specifically 12 of the shots. And through that analysis, and I really encourage people, hopefully maybe you can link to it, to go to read through the entire analysis by Earshot and Forensic Architecture, because it's more than I'll be able to explain. But they, from that, now, analyzing the sound, the muzzle blast, and then the second part of it, they were able to determine that the tank would have the distance between where the shooting came from. And Layan, in the call, she says that right before the shooting begins, she says that the tank is next to me. And Earshot's analysis of that supports that, saying that the tank would have had to have been just 13 to 23 meters away, which is very, very, very close. And at that distance, they would have been able to see who was in that car, and that it was, children, essentially.
What other stories did you learn about that you couldn't put in the film, that you either maybe filmed but just couldn't put in because of editing, or stories that you weren't even able to film that you want people to know about?
We used everything that was filmed. That's for sure. Yeah. But there were obviously, as we were going through, something that we didn't get to really report on, but we wanted to. Laila and I actually did a little bit of it, did report it, and it was published on The Intercept, but it's about the attacks on hospitals. I think that, to be honest, that is a whole other documentary. And Al Jazeera actually just did a really amazing documentary about the second attack on Al-Shifa. So people should definitely watch that. You know, this story, I still feel like ill when I think about it. But in February, it was mid-February, and so for the 2 weeks preceding this, around late January was when the first evacuation order happened in Khan Yunis, including as well for Nasser Hospital, and for more people to go to Rafah. And for like in the 2 weeks after that, leading up to about February 15th, the Israeli military had essentially laid siege to Nasser Hospital. And they were sniping people that were trying to go in and out. There were videos being posted by doctors at the hospital of bodies just laying in the streets outside the hospital because they couldn't go to get those bodies without being shot. And at one point, we saw a journalist who, and by this point, there weren't that many journalists at Nasser Hospital. That had been a place where most of the journalists had been for the past few months, where they were kind of basing their coverage out of. And then a lot of them had to leave. So there were only about 2 or 3 journalists left by February. And one of them was Mohammed Al-Helu, and he had posted a video. I will never forget this. It was of a young man who had been in the hospital just in the days prior, but he had like gone outside and was taken by the military. They sent him back in, and Mohammed had a video of him. He's in the kind of typical white, it looks like PPE, like a PPE suit essentially. And we'd seen images of a lot of Palestinian detainees wearing these. And the kind of eye cover that they normally had was pushed up on his head like that. And they had sent him into the hospital to tell people to leave. He left, and then they shot him.
I remember that story.
And that just, I can't get that out of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, the most moral army in the world did that.
It was just, yeah, that. And the look in his face, you know, his name was Jamal Abu Alola, I believe. And he, like the look in his face when he was sent in was... yeah, is deeply haunted, deeply haunted.
Can you talk about the role of the United States? One of the people interviewed in the documentary is Josh Paul, who quit the State Department over the role of the United States. The documentary also refers to the Leahy Law. Can you talk about those laws, or that law, and also just U.S. complicity in this war? Because of course, sure. The subtitle to your film, right, is "The Night Won't End: Biden's War on Gaza."
Reason that we call, I feel like, you know, I think I've seen a few people on Twitter being there who are Democratic Biden supporters being upset about that, but I don't know how you argue that it isn't his war. Of course, it's his war; it's his legacy. And as you know, we interviewed Akbar Shahid Ahmed from HuffPost, and he talks about. He is a great quote, and he's right. Where with a former Israeli official said to him, with one phone call, the U.S. could stop this war, and that's true. Of course, it's true. With the amount of support that the U.S. gives Israel, there's no way that they could have prosecuted this war to the level that they have without the support of the United States. There's no question about that. And when it comes to the Leahy Law, it was a law proposed by former Senator Patrick Leahy. And the idea of the law is, what it says is that, the U.S. is before the U.S. provides foreign military assistance to foreign militaries, they are supposed to vet those units that receive training or assistance from the U.S. to make sure there aren't any credible allegations of gross violations of human rights. But when it comes to Israel, Ukraine, and Egypt, the U.S., there's a little bit of a reverse. They don't look to see if anything's happened before they give the assistance. They give the assistance, and then, as Josh Paul puts it, they keep an ear out to see if anything's happened. And when it comes to Israel specifically, and Josh Paul, a number of people have said this, including Patrick Leahy, that the U.S. has never actually enforced the Leahy Law when it comes to Israel. And, that's anytime, whether it's this kind of situation or any different ones where if there is a crime that's been committed and the people that commit it are never held accountable, then you've got impunity. And once you've got impunity in a system, then it's just all bets are off.